doing this podcast hasn't even felt like work.
Yeah, it's weird.
At any point.
It's so much work.
Oh my God. Yeah, it hasn't felt like work, but it is work. Let's be very clear. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, they don't just come together overnight. Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. I'm your co-host, Jamie, pronouns she, her.
And I'm your co-host, Spencer, pronouns they, them.
And this is Pixel Therapy. So pull up an armchair, feel free to lie down on the couch, and let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, we've got a special episode for folks today. The end of 2020 is nearly upon us, so we decided we wanted to take a brief pause. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have high hopes for 2021, but hey, whatever. Let's put this here in the ground. But anyway, we wanted to take a brief pause today from our regular format, forego the guest interview this week, and spend some time reflecting on what gaming has meant to us this year. And I think any conversation about what gaming has meant to us this year would not be complete without first talking about what this podcast has meant to us this year. Because I don't know if anybody knows this, but Spencer and I actually started a podcast this year. Mm-hmm. It's called Pixel Therapy, Pixel Therapy Pod, and we've been doing that since what? When did we start this thing?
Like mid-September. Okay, it's felt long, I guess, because quarantine in general feels like a time warp.
Yeah,
wormhole. But yeah, we really just hit our 90-day mark like a week ago.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's nuts to me. It feels like we've been doing this for literally forever. Oh, like in a good way.
Yeah, in a great way. And this is actually our 10th episode, basically. And so that's kind of exciting that we've hit 2 digits. I don't know. It feels good.
No, that's cool. I did not even think about that. So good job, me, doing the intro. Did not even realize, hey, happy 10 episodes to us. Mm-hmm. We're 10 episodes old.
Yeah.
What are your reflections on these last few months? I mean, so we actually started talking about creating the podcast in July, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I feel like I had been wanting to put something in the world that felt that felt more authentic than, I guess, as a writer and designer who writes and designs for other people, to support myself, for money. I didn't really feel like I was doing anything really creative or what I would call art. And it's also hard because I felt like in order to do a podcast, I needed to do it with somebody else. I knew that didn't want to do it by myself. I've always felt like I have a lot of ideas, but no direction or motivation. And I just sort of I don't know, I wanted it to work and I wanted it to matter. And so I think there was a bit of vulnerability there in sort of approaching a friend and asking if that's something that they would be interested in. And yeah, I don't know, you and I have been friends for a long time. And I think that we've always sort of been, or I've always seen you this way at least, but not foils is not the right word because it's not like you stop me from doing anything, but I think we're two very different people. And it creates a very rich friendship, I guess. But yeah, I came to you and was like, what if we, how you talk, how we spend 6 to 8 hours together at a time and we mostly just talk about games, or I watch you play games fucking girlfriend reviews. What if
what if we recorded that and put it on the internet for other people to listen to? And I feel like my first response was lol, who would want to listen to that?
Yeah.
Because we are different people, and my default position is I have nothing interesting to say to anyone.
Which is just BS.
No one should listen to me. Yeah, I don't know, man. This is just kind of crazy. It's wild to think that we're here, that we're 10 episodes in, that we started doing this and did it, and that it's still going. Mm-hmm. I think, we say before we started the podcast, I was very much coming into it with this idea of like, this is just going to be like a silly little thing that like Spencer and I do for a few weeks, and then it'll probably piddle out and that'll be the end of it. But even though I thought that, I definitely like set us up for it to be a long-term thing, right? Like we were pretty intense about it from the word go. It was kind of
that never crossed my mind. I was like, I'm in. Once you said yes and you were like, I think like once it started to feel real, I just knew that it was, I don't know, it meant something to me. And I never, even if the thought crossed my, like, it's funny. I was talking to Jamie earlier and I was saying how like it can be hard sometimes for me to like fully commit to a project. I guess I have never really felt so inspired. But it was like a jigsaw falling into place, like when we talked about even down to splitting up how like from me wrangling guests and crafting interviews to you like editing and creating music. Like it was like all of the things that felt incomplete on my end, you were immediately there speaking to or already like filling. And then it felt so right. I don't know. It's like love at first sight. I don't know.
Yeah. And like, so like my experience of that is like, well, you had said a few different times, like, oh, maybe we should do a podcast. And like, I was very much like, oh, this is just Spencer, like throwing out an idea.
Like I said, yeah.
This isn't going to be a real thing. Like, I'll just like, like I was just like, oh, I'll just, kind of like go along with it a little bit. And then like you kept bringing it up and it was becoming clear to me that like you were pretty serious about wanting to do it. And obviously I love talking about video games. And I'm not someone who like, I don't really put myself out there in creative endeavors very often, but like the idea was intriguing and 2020 is a shit show. So like, what else do I have to do? And so I just kind of pushed back a little bit and was like, okay, so like, what's our angle? Like, what is the unique thing we're trying to say? Because there's a million podcasts about video games. I don't want to just put another thing out there. Like, and like you came back with like more concrete ideas, like, oh, we're going to do an interview show and we're going to try to talk to folks who don't get as much representation in the industry. And we're going to have this queer angle. And like, you came back with all of that and it was like, oh, okay. Like we might actually have something structurable here. And then, yeah, I feel like from there, it was like, oh, let's hang out and talk about it. And I like came in with an agenda.
Yeah.
we were like off to the races.
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was trailing off.
I think what really solidified it for me was when we had that first conversation with Zombie Kills. And the reception that we were getting from the guests that we reached out to. Because like a big part of this is that, we wanted to talk to people who had something to say about games, who were looking at them and seeing the connections that you could form between the love of games and other areas of your life in the way that we try to cultivate and appreciate. And I thought that we would be waiting weeks to hear from people. Like I thought that, we're not big names in the industry. So I in my opinion, folks would have no reason to respond to us. But the fact that we were able to get, Earl T. Kim in the room, who plays Norio and goes to Tsushima, that we were able to get Courtney Craven, who's the co-founder of Can I Play That, which is a huge resource for game developers in the accessibility space. Like that folks like Danielle Brathwaite Shirley, who is a Black trans game developer who is an artist and creating these digital archives. Like these are folks who like we are learning from and growing from, and who are changing how I look at games and experience games. And that's a gift. And to be able to share that with others and have that resonate. Like so many of our guests have just expressed, how they've never been contacted by a podcast like ours, how they've never seen a space to have conversations like this. And the fact that all of you have been downloading, like, I mean, in the beginning, it would be great if we would get 1 to 2 downloads a day. Like the fact that we're consistently seeing download days in the double and triple digits is incredible. And I'm just so thankful for all of it.
Yeah, I'm same. I am so thankful and still like, and I don't like this is just like me and my like inner head bullshit, but like I'm still like, why are people downloading it? Like I guess, and you know, when I pick at that, it's like I just think that like I'm the problem. I'm like, well, Spencer's saying great things and our guests are saying great things, so I guess I get why people are interested.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's you know, for someone like me who just doesn't, just never wants to put themselves out there, just so afraid of like getting smacked in the face and like told that I'm exactly as shitty as I think I am. Having this get received the way it's been has been it's been really fucking special. I don't know, man. I don't know that I would have made it through 2020 in like the mental state that I'm in without this podcast. Like I would have survived. Like I'd still be alive, but it's just, it's been something to be able to like put myself into in a way I haven't been able to forever. You know, I went to college for digital post-production, which is like, was focused in video editing, but I also took audio editing classes, which is what has made me able to edit our podcast. And then I just like, I didn't pursue it, like partially because I'm a big chicken and partially because when it comes to like doing creative things, I really need to have a certain level of autonomy and control over it, or I lose like all passion in it. I worked for a few years for a wedding videography company.
Oh God,
it sucked the absolute soul out of my body because like I would make what I thought was like this really cool documentary about their wedding, and then they'd be like, "Ew, I don't like how I look in that shot," and I'm like, "But you look real." It's like nobody wants an auteur when it comes to your wedding video. So that just kind of like left me really like disillusioned with the whole concept of like, okay, so I'm going to be working my ass off and like, but like not have any say over the creative vision of this thing. And so I just kind of left that whole part of myself behind and didn't pursue creative stuff for a long time. And so getting to revisit that and cut the podcast and like inject myself into something, it's special as hell. And the fact that like people are, that I'm doing that and that people are responding positively to it is just like, ugh. I can't even articulate it. It's really fucking special.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
2020. I think it's bullshit. All the people who are like, if you didn't learn something or create something in 2020, like you were wasting your time. Like, we are living in a global pandemic. We are living in unprecedented times. We are living in an incredibly stressful and violent and terrifying time. And just the fact that, you know, y'all are getting up every day and surviving, you should be celebrating that. Shit's been really hard out here. And like, I don't prescribe that ideology at all. That being said, I like, it's not that I'm thankful that like we created something. I guess I'm just thankful that it, like, I think like you said, it gave me something to hold on to when things were getting really dark. And like personally, it's been a rough year for me. I felt really alone, isolated in personal ways beyond just the pandemic. And it's given me, I don't know, it's a lot of things. It's just nice to work on something, to create something, have that be received, and like you said, like not feel like it's because of someone else, or it's validating. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and it's not about being productive, right? I think that's how a lot of this stuff gets contextualized, is like, how were you productive in 2020 and what did you accomplish? And like, we didn't do this because we needed to like produce something. It was more like we were having these conversations anyway. And it was kind of like, how can we like just reach out and see if other people are interested in these conversations? How can we reach out and try to find people to connect with around these conversations? Like that was the impetus of it.
Tess agrees with you.
Yeah, sorry, my dog is barking in the background. But yeah, I mean, that was the reasoning, right? It wasn't about producing a thing or like that we needed to like be generating something. That
Yeah.
certainly wasn't my drive. I mean, Lord knows I like work my day job, and like being productive at all is just like such a slog. It's like, will I maybe get one thing done on my to-do list today? But doing this podcast hasn't even felt like work.
Yeah, it's weird
at any point. It's
so much work.
Oh my God. Yeah, it hasn't felt like work, but it is work. Let's be very clear. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, they don't just come together overnight.
Yeah. So, Jamie, what are your hopes for the future with the podcast? Any?
I mean, look, we already have some exciting stuff that we know is on the horizon. In 2021. I just want to keep doing it right now. Like, we were kind of talking about this the other day, but like, I don't think we haven't sat down and put together the 5-year plan, right? The hope for the podcast right now is just to continue to grow it and to find more people who want to have these conversations. And I'd love to like hear from more people.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I'd love for us to focus on in 2021 is how to find more connection with you, our listeners. Like, you know, you're out there, and we want to hear from you. So having more opportunity for that is really what I'm looking forward to in 2021, and just continuing to do it because I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, like I think something I'm really proud of is the consistency, and I want to keep that up. It's really important that, like, I want you all to know, like, how seriously, like, we're taking it, and that we want to bring you a high quality way to spend an hour more of your time every couple of weeks. And so, yeah, I think similarly, I just want to keep, having really high quality conversations and bringing that to the fore, figuring out how to engage. I think, as Jamie alluded to, we have some announcements for 2021 that we'll be able to share more details on soon. But so, yeah, I'm excited to see where it takes us, and to just keep having fun. Like, I want it to always be as fulfilling as it feels now. I don't want it to, I think it's brought us closer in a lot of ways, and I'm really happy about that. So I guess I just want to keep seeing how this, as in the podcast, and this, as in us, like how it continues to grow.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like grow is like, I feel like I am growing by doing this podcast and getting to participate in these conversations and express myself in this way. So I don't know. I'm just really appreciative to everyone who's listening and supporting and giving us this opportunity to do this and leaning in. Podcasts are incredibly personal, right? Like they're personal for us to record because it feels like we're just talking to each other, but then it goes out and y'all listen to it, and it is like you're part of that conversation in a really unique way. So I mean, I think it just inherently makes the whole dynamic feel more intimate than it would otherwise. And it means that like, it means even more to us that we're putting so much of ourselves out there and being vulnerable in this way. And the fact that that's being received the way that it is, I can't say thank you enough. Like, I think our appreciation for, regardless of how you're engaging with us, like if you're mostly just following on social media and liking what we're doing, you're listening to the episodes, you gave us a review, you're reposting some of our stuff, you're subscribing on Patreon, like whatever way you're participating and supporting us, thank you. Like, thank you so much. We see it all. We really appreciate it. And we really genuinely do want to get to know each and every one of you better. So we've put together as an end of the year thing. This is the end of the year. We're reflecting on 2020. We're reflecting on gaming in 2020. What we wanted to put together for you today is our very unofficial Pixel Therapy Game Awards, TM, yeah, copyrighted.
This is a video game podcast, as a reminder.
yeah, it's not just us gushing about our feelings for you and our feelings for each other. We also want to talk about our feelings about video games. So when I say this is unofficial, I mean it's very unofficial. We're not even limiting ourselves. So the way we're structuring this is Spencer and I are each going to award a handful of unique awards to the games that had an impact on us this year.
Mm.
This year of 2020, our Lord.
Mhm.
And this is not just games that came out in 2020, it's games that we played in 2020. So don't at us about when these games came out. We don't care. We played them
Yeah.
this year, and that's all that matters to us.
The panel of judges is me, myself, and I. And our credentials are we love games.
Exactly. And that's all that matters. So without further ado, Spencer, what is the first award that you would like to give today?
Oh, thank you, Jamie. Now, this is an award that needs no introduction.
No, it does need an introduction. We're making these up. You have to introduce it. Yep.
Right.
That's
So this first award I'd like to hand out is the game that lived rent-free in my head. Now, this is a game that took up a lot of real estate, and some might say for no good reason. It was a game that its presence made itself known long before I saw nary a screen grab or a trailer. Even before it made itself known visually to me, it heralded its arrival by its siren song. And the game of which I speak is Bugsnax. Thank you. Thank you, Bugsnax. Thank you, Young Horses, right? That who developed it? Yeah, like this game truly lived rent-free in my head, especially these past months. Like, it's been kind of a slog getting through these first dark weeks of winter, and the full Bugsnax original soundtrack, beautifully crafted by musician Seth Parker, was graciously uploaded to YouTube for free by the Bugsnax team. And I tell you, that 90 minutes really gets me through. It's my new lo-fi beats to chill and study to. This soundtrack it's just good electronic music. Like, if you just like vibes, like if you just like to chill and, you know, just want to feel a range of emotions, I highly recommend the Bugsnax soundtrack. And then that's not even to mention the game itself. Like, it's living. I mean, the soundtrack's playing in my head right now as I speak. But this game, it really took me by surprise. Like, I downloaded it because I was lucky enough to get a PS5, and it was actually, once that cleared out my bank account, it was blessedly a free download for the first couple weeks of like November or something. And so, having heard all about it, I downloaded it. And at first I thought, like many others, that it was just going to be a wacky body horror game. But it turned out to be a surprisingly emotionally rich tapestry. The characters were very engaging. It was a very queer game. Like, I would argue it had better a non-binary and queer relationship representation than like the other AAA titles that came out this year touting to do the same. Like, honestly, as a queer trans person, I'm just vibing, and like, not everything has to be about how I'm suffering all the time or like my body sucks or whatever it is that cis people obsess about what it must be like to be trans. And so just having a story where you can have a main character in the cast who's like non-binary, and it's just like, you just use they pronouns, and like they're just a fully realized character outside of that. It's like pretty refreshing, which is sad. But thank you, Bugsnax, for reminding me that games can be fun and mean something and be impactful without necessarily having to trot back to the traumatization of a marginalized group.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. What a wonderful surprise gift that game was this year. Like, yeah, from every aspect of it. The
sound design.
Yeah, it's just like, it was so much more than I thought it was going to be in such like the best way.
Yeah, it's just fun. And it, I feel like games that can be really lighthearted and cartoony, and like, I wouldn't say it's a game for kids, but I guess I was surprised by the level of care that was brought to every detail of this game. Like, it was fully realized. It was immersive. It was funny. It was witty. It's just a great game. So thank you, Bugsnax, for living rent-free in my head.
I still walk around the house going Scoopy Banoopy.
Oh yeah, bunger, 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 bunger.
Bunger, bunger, bunger. Yeah.
Anyway, with that, over to you, Jamie, for your first award.
Yes. Thank you. The first award that I will be giving today is the award for the best game that I could not finish.
Ow!
And that award is going to Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is a game made by Mobius Digital, is the developer, published by Annapurna Interactive. It's a first-person game where you are a little space explorer. The game starts out, you're on your home planet, and you go and meet with the scientist and get yourself up into your spaceship, and you go up into outer space. And it's really set up as very open-ended. Like, you're just out here to explore space. But what you realize is that every 22 minutes, the universe explodes and the game resets. Or the entire solar system, the sun goes supernova.
So you're like reliving that over and over?
Yeah. So like they clue you into the fact that the sun's about to go supernova, that your 22-minute time loop is done in a really cool way where the music actually changes it becomes a bit louder, and it goes into this piece of music that just, as you play it, you realize like, oh, that's my cue that I'm running out of time, which creates this like intense, like, oh, I've got to run around and like do stuff before the sun goes supernova, because every time it goes supernova, you're brought all the way back to the beginning and start on your home planet again, and you have to go back into space. So it's a little bit of a roguelite in that sense. However, as you're exploring the galaxy, this galaxy that you exist in, you're collecting information, you're finding old pieces of history from other civilizations that have existed, specifically the civilization that had been studying the sun and had realized that the galaxy was going to end. So you're like studying them, you're collecting bits of information, and that all gets logged in your ship's computer, and you can revisit that timeline. So even though you're resetting every 22 minutes, all of the information that you collect still exists in your ship's computer. And it has this really interesting way of like, it shows you like, here's a thing. I'm not describing this very well, but you're looking at your ship's computer, and it's got this kind of like timeline laid out, and these, it shows all of the planets in the galaxy and has little like info markers coming off of them. And so if you find a thing on a planet, it stores that in the information that you know about this planet. Here's the thing that you found. But then it'll show you that there's more information to find about that thing, or it'll make it clear that you found all the information about that thing. And some of the things have threads that lead you to other planets, or they lead you to other areas. So it makes it so, like, you're exploring this galaxy and you're finding this information, but you're doing all of that in this way that like it's giving you some clues about kind of where to go and what to look into. But other than that, you're really on your own. And so I found everything that there was to find. Like, I pieced the whole ship's computer together. But what I couldn't do is at the very end, once you've pieced all the information together, you realize that there's a way to escape the time loop. And it's a complicated process, and the mechanics of this game are unfortunately just not great. The ship control is really kind of difficult.
Okay.
And I couldn't complete the steps that you had to complete to actually escape the supernova.
That's frustrating.
It was really frustrating, and I did it like several times. And of course, it's this 22-minute loop, so it's like when you fuck it up, it's you've got to just burn out the rest of the 22 minutes because you know you're not going to have enough time to get to where you need to be. Yeah. So it definitely put a damper on the whole experience. But what I ended up doing was just Googling it, and this is kind of like the magic of the internet nowadays and streaming culture, and the fact that like I was able to just find someone playing through the end of this game. And it's so impactful and emotional. I don't want to like spoil anything more about this game, except to say that like there was so many times in the game where that 22 minutes was coming to an end. And it just encourages you to find a way to like, there were times where the 22 minutes was coming to an end and I was like, oh fuck, I'm like almost at this thing I've been trying to find. I'm going to try to run through and find it. And there were other times where it was like the music would start to play and I'd just be in a space where maybe I'm there with another alien and he's playing a banjo. And I'm like, I'm just going to sit down and watch the universe end.
Wow.
And so it was just super impactful. And kind of similar to Bugsnax. It has a ridiculously good score. That was like my top played album of the year on my Spotify. So the music of it is still with me, and like the music still kind of brings me back to that game in a really visceral way. And I love the Outer Wilds. If anything I'm saying intrigues you, I think you should check it out. It's a really special game.
Making yourself more comfortable with death or experiencing it over and over again seems like a valuable exercise for getting through 2020.
Yeah, it definitely was. I played that right at the top of the year too, before I even knew what we had coming for us. So,
well, my next one is also a game that I played at the top of the year. My next award is called Game So Nice. I played it twice, but actually it was more like 3 times. And that game is, I'm going to say Persona 5 Royal, because it did come out in the US earlier. It was like February 2020, which feels like a lifetime ago. But Persona 5, I mean, okay, I don't even know how to explain. It is a Japanese role-playing game where you play as a teenage boy who by day is a mild-mannered and well-behaved high schooler who is attempting to navigate his 3rd year in a new city and make friends and all of that. And by night, he goes into this visualization of the unconscious mind of the city of Tokyo, where he fights alongside his friends monstrous personifications called personas that are formed from the distorted desires of human beings in our psyches and distort how we act towards each other. And he is working to fight the personifications of these urges and eventually fight God.
Casual.
But I don't know. This game, I think style is a word that immediately comes to mind when people talk about Persona 5. It is by Atlas, who's responsible for the Shin Megami Tensei series. And Persona has actually been around for over a decade now. 20 years, I want to say.
Yeah, quite a while.
And like loosely related stories, I would say they are very existential. They sort of deal with everything from the sort of condition of powerlessness that many young people may feel in this hyper-capitalist, consumerist society that we live. I think it deals with, our perceptions of ourselves and others. Like the whole, like a big theme in the game is around sort of tearing off the mask that we wear and allowing ourselves to lean in to our most base urges that some may think of as violent or dangerous, but just seeing the power that we all have innately, and the power we have to be all of these different things. It's a really cool game, amazing soundtrack, awesome characters, super immersive. It's 200 hours of gameplay.
So if you want to hop in.
So great way to just kind of exit my life for a minute. I pretty much the whole month of March, my boyfriend had built, we were living with lots of people at that time. And I was very scared to leave my partner's bedroom. I was basically staying with him because my home had folks who unfortunately were essential workers, and there was no common space. It was complicated with COVID, and he basically made a nest for me where I had a TV with Persona and a bed and all these pillows and this little corner bed fort of his room. And so I don't know, it got me through those first couple of months. I don't know if that's healthy. I wouldn't recommend it, but I mean, hey, we're gamers. What can I say? But yeah, Persona 5 came out in 2017. I was very late to the party. And so by the time I was wrapping it up. Royal was coming out, so I've played this game for like 500 plus hours at this point, and I'll fucking play it again when Strikers comes out. But yeah, was there anything that you wanted to say about Persona?
I mean, I played the original Persona 5 when it came out and absolutely loved it. I agree with everything that you're saying. The story of that game is so engaging, and I really love the way it oscillates between you're going into the the personified spaces, like the inside of people's heads and inside of their dark desires. But then like during the day, you're just a normal ass teenager going to high school, and you have to take quizzes, and you have to like answer questions from your teachers. And if you're on your cell phone, they'll throw their chalk at you. Yeah. And I don't know. It's just really cool the way it bounces two things, the way you're building up both like your own high school, like human being social stats, and then how those impact what you're able to do in the personified world. Like you have to build up your charm, and you have to build up your proficiency and stuff like that. And then all of those skills aid you in the personified world as well. I'd never played a Persona game before, but I'd been interested in them. And yeah, 5 really got me hooked. I really want Persona 4 to come out on something that I can play it on. Same. I know it's on Vita, which I do have an old Vita I could pull out and dust off. But I'd much rather play it on my TV, and they did just remaster it for PC. And I just bring it to PS5, bring it to PS4.
I gotta buy a Persona machine.
Yeah. But I'm similarly really excited for Strikers. I love the world that they built. I love the characters. I'm a big Ryuji stan, and I love the design and aesthetic of the game. It's a really special game. I did start Royal, but I have not finished it yet. Maybe that's going to be the thing I hunker down and do over the holiday break. Finally,
I'm like 100 just for that Akechi storyline that you get.
I know. I've heard that that they made a lot of like quality of life improvements in the re-release of Royal, like throughout the game, but you have to push through like 150 hours of content before you get to like the new content, like the really new content. So
it's a light 150.
It's a light 150. I do love the game though. I have every intention of finishing it. I've just been kind of like I'll take like a few month break, and then I'll come back and I'll do like one palace at a time. So I will get back to it. Great game, great choice for
what's next for you, Jamie?
The next award that I'm going to give is the game that felt almost like an indie movie. And I'm going to give that award to Wide Ocean Big Jacket. Wide Ocean Big Jacket is it's essentially a text-based game.
Like a visual novel?
It's kind of a visual novel. There is some moving around in it, but it's pretty much, you're mostly experiencing a story through text. It's developed by developer Turnfollow, and it's a really short game. It's like 90 minutes, I think it took me to play it. But so impactful. I really recommend this. You can get it on iOS. You can get it on Switch. That's where I played it. I'm thinking you can get it on Android as well. You can get it on PC. But the narrative of this game is that you're along on a camping trip with a young girl. She's 13, and her boyfriend. And well, he's sort of her boyfriend, right? Like they're 13-year-olds. So it's kind of like, the girl's name is Mord, and her longtime friend turned boyfriend is Ben. So they're like right on the cusp of becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. And they're on this camping trip with Mord's aunt and uncle.
Okay.
Who are like 30 somethings who don't have kids. And I don't know, it just really captured, for one thing, I played it like literally the week before you and I went on a trip this summer. Like we went with our partners to do this like kind of camping trip at a cabin in the middle of nowhere. So I was kind of like already feeling like camping vibes, like wanting to like sit by a fire and just have like weird conversations into the night. And it really captures like that feeling of, first of all, being at that age, that like teenager, preteen age, when like you're kind of weird and like too honest and like put yourself out there and like just ask questions. You know, Mord, like there's a moment where Mord's like asking her aunt about sex that just felt really authentic. and her aunt like not having kids and not even really wanting to have kids, like kind of like having to struggle through that conversation and not sure what to say.
Yeah.
I don't know. It really resonated with me of like taking these trips with people who, aren't your parents, and how kids kind of will like ask any adult anything. And like then how adults can be put in that situation of trying to answer something when they don't even feel like they have it figured out either.
Yeah.
And how we all kind of navigate that. So it kind of just captures this like 2-day camping trip. There's some really beautiful, quiet moments in the game where you're just sitting with the characters. And I really love the way they do the conversations around the fire. You don't necessarily play as any one character. You're kind of making dialogue decisions for everyone.
Kind of like Kentucky Route Zero.
Yeah, kind of like Kentucky Route Zero in that sense. And I don't know, it was super impactful to me, and it felt like a little indie movie experience, except that I got to influence the direction that it went and like kind of decide how these characters were going to relate to each other. And I highly recommend it.
Beautiful.
It was a really special little game. What's your next award?
Yeah, so I guess speaking of special little game, this next one I'm naming Best Medicine for 2020. This was honestly like a late game of the year for me. And it's new to PS5, but PC gamers have had early access to it since the beginning of 2020. But the game is Temtem. And I mentioned Temtem in our last Patreon only co-op mode bonus episode, if folks, just so you know that that's a thing that exists. But like I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit more about it, just because I was really surprised by it. I was really caught off guard. Like I had not heard much about Temtem. And essentially it's an MMO creature collecting game similar to Pokemon, which I resent because I think Temtem has done something. I think that they've made Pokemon better. They have become what Pokemon would be if they hadn't become like a cash cow, just trying to release more and more titles for more and more money. Like I really think that Temtem feels like a game for people who grew up with Pokemon generations 1 through 3, specifically Generation 3, which was Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And it was a game that introduced a lot of new concepts to the Pokemon universe. It was the first Pokemon game that had 2v2 battles. It also introduced a lot more content to the Pokemon world. It had a 40-plus hour main quest. It had this really rich, mysterious world with a lot of diverse landscapes. And it introduced aspects that would make the game more conducive to replayability or continued play beyond the main quest, with like these beauty contests and breeding opportunities that really made Pokemon feel like a richer world. And the sad part is that after that generation, they didn't really continue to pursue and build out these things that they had introduced in Generation 3. They kind of just seemed to really lean in to making more and more Pokemon to make it so that you needed to get the next game, and updating for the latest consoles or whatever. There's actually been a lot of complaints about how Pokemon hasn't really grown up. It hasn't really grown with the players that have grown up loving it. Like it's sort of stayed the same. And I think Temtem, it really took the magic of Generation 3 Pokemon, and it was as if a design team really sat and thought about what it would take to make a game that was engaging and had all of these elements. And I guess by these elements, I mean, at its core, it's a game where you are a tamer, not a trainer, a tamer, and you go around on this adventure, catching and taming Temtem. You fight in these battles. You are engaging on this quest to be the best tamer in the land. But what Temtem has is just this really unique personality that I really love. It's a really beautiful world, really taking advantage of the PS5's graphic capability. It's really colorful and thoughtful. It's surprisingly detailed, like even though it's a soft, like cell shaded, bright world, like there's little details, like from stuff from like a remote control hanging on someone's desk to like little drawings on the fridge to a box of snacks on the counter or a loaf of bread that they were halfway through cutting. Like the game feels littered with little touches that make it feel alive. The battles are closer to the type of strategy that you're having to think about in a Persona game, more so than the type of melee fighting that you expect from typical Pokemon. Like, I guess I feel like in Pokemon, I could pretty much just train up one strong Pokemon and brute force my way through all the battles. But in Temtem, it really forces you to think not just about elements like water is powerful against fire, but they also introduce like time-based moves, like, oh, you can only use this move after 2 or 3 or more turns have passed in the battle. Like, certain moves take time to charge. The way they treat energy and stats, the way that they involve like certain combinations of Temtem will unlock different power-ups because of this 2v2 battle system. Like, they've just really created a system that rewards you. Like, it's a lot to wrap your brain around at first, but once you understand the fighting system, it's incredibly engaging and rewarding, and it really makes the whole experience of finding, training, catching, fighting with Temtem just a lot more engaging than a game where I feel like all I need to do is just get one strong fighter. It's been described as hard because it's a lot more built out. But I really think for people who grew up loving original Pokemon, like for me, it was really nostalgic. It was really exciting because I recognized elements, especially from Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald. Yeah, like I would say it's definitely heavily inspired. I think it's not totally unfair for people who are drawing parallels to Pokemon, but I really see Temtem as a gift. I think too it reflects a more contemporary audience, a more diverse audience. Like, this is the first type of Pokemon-esque game where I've run around seeing indigenous people and Black people and Asian people and white people. Like it's not just, we're not accepting white as the default. And the game just really nods to its cultural diversity. There's a mountain called Anak Mountain, and the people who live around it look like indigenous Filipinos. And there's a land I haven't visited yet called Uhuru, and there are a lot of like Black trainers out and about where like it's just like, it's just really cool. It's a really sweet game. The character creation, I really credit for showing how easy it is to create inclusive character builders. Something we were talking about recently. But like, you can pick any hair, any body shape, any walking style, any voice. None of those are assigned to a specific gender, and then all you do is pick your pronouns and your name. There's no, like, I hate when character builders force you eventually to put yourself into a box. Like, this shows that like you can really bring your full self to the game, and it doesn't make it hard to do so. So I just love Temtem. It's really been a balm these last few weeks of the year. I'm also playing like Assassin's Creed Valhalla at the same time, but I found that I've been drawn more and more to Temtem because it's just so darn delightful. And I think for anyone who is nostalgic for early days Pokemon and is looking for something that an adult can enjoy, I would definitely highly recommend Temtem, especially the fact, I didn't really mention this, but the fact that it's an MMO. It makes sense. Like, I'm running around as a trainer and I'm seeing other trainers running around and battling and stuff too. Like, it just makes that world feel all the more rich. So really enjoying Temtem. Yeah, pass it back over to you.
Oh, that's great. I have no touchstone for Pokemon at all. I tried to play the newest release and just did not connect with me. But everything you're saying about Temtem sounds very cool. So maybe I'll have to check that one out. The next award that I'm going to give is Best NPC Hugs. Best hugs from a non-player character. And that goes to Spiritfarer. We talked Spiritfarer to death several episodes ago, so I will not do that again here. But for as much as like I have issues with this game and like some of the mechanics and the way they laid it out, I would be remiss to to not include it on a list of games that impacted me the most this year. It made me incredibly sad, but it was at a time that like I was feeling incredibly sad, and like having something that just allowed me to like be sad and for that to be okay was really important to me this year. And more games should let you hug the NPC characters. Those hug animations were like my favorite part of the game, and it felt, I don't know, it's like we can't go see people and spend time with them and hug them outside of the people that live in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just something really powerful about, within the first 10 minutes of that game, being able to wrap your arms around another character that you had a connection with and give them a hug and have them hug you back in the way they like lean into the hugs. It meant a lot. That game meant a lot to me this year.
Yeah, that resonates. Like, touch has been, we're all pretty touch starved, I'd say. And there was something really simple and powerful about the connection, that feeling of connection that game gave. And such a simple gesture, but yeah, we all needed hugs this year.
Absolutely. 100%. What's your next award?
Yeah, so this is my second to last award, and it is for what I'm calling unexpected pixel therapy. And I'm giving this award to God of War 2018, God of War 4, a game we talked about a lot in episode 9. And I'm giving it the Unexpected Pixel Therapy Award because I think that, I don't know, I was surprisingly struck by, I guess I felt like when I first started playing God of War, I did not like Kratos. Like, I was actively against him. I did not trust him. I was kind of like, oh, I got nothing else to play, and everyone keeps telling me you gotta play this damn game.
By everyone, you mean me.
Yeah, Jamie, the only person I talk to. And like, I felt like over the course of the game, just as we were understanding more about Kratos, and in turn, Kratos was growing and changing as a father, I felt like it was a parallel for. So a couple years ago, I went and I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what. I just didn't feel good. I mean, this is my whole life, I guess, but like, things were bad and dark, and I had been diagnosed formally with generalized anxiety and depression when I was like 13 or 14. But I hadn't really given much thought to that diagnosis since then. And I had just kind of gone on living my life, getting traumatized here and there, and just trying to deal with it along the way. And so I finally, here in Boston, there is a center that does like full psychological, neurological testing. Like I did everything from, they would show me a picture and then tell me to draw it from memory, to they would ask me to define certain words that they would read from a list, or they would read a list to me and then tell me to try to remember, like it'd be different memory things, different IQ things, different they would intersperse it with these interviews where they'd ask me a bunch of questions, or then I would have to take these quizzes. It would be like, how much do you agree or disagree with this statement? At the end of the day, so a few weeks later, I got called in and they gave me this like 100-page report of like who I was, basically, like what was my deal. And my diagnosis expanded to generalized anxiety, major depression. I'm a major now.
Ooh, congrats.
And chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. And something that the doctor felt a need to note on in the meeting when he was going over my results was that he said that he and the team were struck by the amount of times that I had indicated in quizzes or in interviews the statement that I deserve nothing, I hate myself, I'm worthless, I deserve to die, everyone will leave me at some point. And I remember I started crying, like tears like rolling down my cheeks, hearing these statements repeated back to me because I didn't even think of it. Like I didn't go into that room thinking I feel like shit today, so I'm just going to be mean to myself. Like I was just answering the questions honestly. And when they laid it out in front of me, how often I had self-assessed that I was worthless, and how much I hated myself. Like he said, like the doctor was talking to me about how like he was like, for someone like I didn't even know this guy, but he was like that drawing you did. There was an activity I said earlier where they showed me a picture and they asked me to draw it. He's like,
yeah,
I've seen maybe two people who drew it with the care and specificity that you did. I've never seen and he's like, at the same time, I've never seen a drawing where someone was so clearly so hard on themselves. Like he was like, it felt like you were so afraid to make a mistake, to do it wrong. And he's like, for someone with so much to offer, it's like surprising to me how low you think of yourself, like how distorted your self view is. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, damn, is our psychologists usually that opinionated when delivering results? Anyway, but it really struck me. And, I guess in a lot of ways, when I think about how I was playing God of War, I think that maybe Kratos and I, of course, I haven't murdered entire villages of people, nor would I ever think of doing that. But I think in terms of hating ourselves so much and displacing that hatred of ourselves to others. Like, I think I hated Kratos so much because I didn't want to see the ways that like I could be just as violent to myself as he is, and in turn like isolate myself from others just because I truly believe deep down, even subconsciously, that I am worthless. Like I'm bad about keeping in touch with friends. I'm bad about always remembering to text. I'm bad about just like always being there. And it's not because I don't care. I care so much. Like I love the people in my life so much. I would give them anything they asked for, but I just don't understand why they would waste time on me. And so playing God of War, by the time I reached the end of that game, I really felt this love, I guess, for Kratos, his character. And I was really thankful for the folks at Santa Monica Studio for what they had done in terms of the growth of that character and what it showed me. But I really was not expecting that from a God of War game. And like it really helped me sort of contextualize like my own PTSD and understand that like I'm gonna get older and I'm still gonna have PTSD. I'm not gonna grow up and it's not gonna heal itself. Like I'm always gonna be fighting with these demons, and I need to be able to find a way to make peace and find meaning outside of just being angry and hating myself, because that's just gonna kill me and it's gonna hurt others. And so I don't know, I was really appreciative of that game.
Yeah. A lot of that resonates. I don't feel like I have anything to add. We talked that game to death.
Yeah.
in our last episode, and yeah, I think if you go back and listen to that episode 9, you'll hear all the ways that like what you're saying about it I resonated with as well. But unexpected is the right word for it. It was a powerful experience in a place that even as someone who had like played the other God of War games, I was not coming into God of War 2018 thinking that it was gonna move me in the way that it did. And yeah, it's a special game.
If I can love Kratos, I can love myself. That's what God of War taught me. If I can forgive Kratos, I can forgive myself.
That's great. Really good.
And with that, some quick emotional excavation. Jamie, what's your next award?
Sorry, still reeling from all that. The next award that I have to give is the game that it's an award for the game that I loved in the moment and feel most conflicted about after the fact. And I'm giving that award to The Last of Us Part 2.
Here.
The Last of Us Part 2 is I don't think I'm going on a limb to say it's an amazing video game experience. It's certainly an amazing technical achievement. It's beautifully designed.
We can all agree.
The acting is phenomenal. I think the writing's really good. I think there's a lot of critiques that you can poke at it, but I don't think it's necessarily that the writing is bad. I don't think that's the takeaway. I think the writing is problematic. it's a game that like I blew through in like a week. We talked about a ton. It's part of what inspired the creation of this podcast, is talking about The Last of Us Part 2. There's so much in there to love, and yet coming out of that game and reading all of the discourse around it, reading all of the takes on it, understanding like the crunch that the developers went through to make that game.
Right.
There's also these, there's allegations of sexual harassment and stuff that have circulated around Naughty Dog that they've been very dismissive of. Naughty Dog being the developer. So I don't know. It just sounds like they maybe don't have the best work culture over there. They certainly, from Jason Schreier in particular has done a lot of really good reporting. If you're interested in looking deeper at some of the stuff that's come out in the last few years about the climate at Naughty Dog. But it just sounds like they have a culture of perfectionism, that they're really pushing their developers to make. I mean, and the games that they make are gorgeous, but it's like at what cost at the end of the day? There's a lot of stuff in the way that game is written that they've kind of created this pattern of really treating their Black characters really poorly. A lot of violence and trauma inflicted against Black characters that just feels like it's a weird pattern at this point that doesn't feel like it's just a one-off random thing. It feels like something they really need to explore. And then some of the parallels that have been drawn between the narrative of the game and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's just hard to, taking that game in the full context of what it is and being able to walk away and say like, yeah, I still love this game. I can't do that anymore. Like I can't separate the game from all of the context. It was still a really powerful experience to have had. I will still think on the game fondly, or like I'm able to think on the game fondly, but there's also a lot of baggage that comes with that. And so it's the game that I'm kind of walking away from 2020 feeling the most conflicted about after the fact.
Yeah, I highly recommend folks check out the Vice Games article, it's called The Not So Hidden Israeli Politics of The Last of Us Part 2 by Emmanuel Myberg, just to give more context to what Jamie's referring to. But yeah, that resonates. We need more diverse games.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the other thing, right? Like, this is a game that's, there's a trans character in the game. There's the main couple of the game is a lesbian couple, and like, yeah, the trans representation is not great. You can certainly pick it apart. There's,
yet again, trans representation is predicated on it being rooted in the trauma and violence of existing as trans under cis, through the cis lens of what they think being trans is.
Yes. And I don't know. It's not a perfect game by any stretch, but I still think like what they accomplished with the game narratively, in the way they position the two main characters and the parallels that they draw, there's a lot of like really amazing narrative crafting that they did in the game. They took some really big chances with the game, and they alienated a huge portion of the fan base by even taking things in the direction that they did. But it's a game that you can't just, I think you do it a disservice by just taking it at face value and not talking about some of these deeper issues. And then the game won, it won a bunch of awards at the Game Awards that just happened, but specifically it won Best Game Direction. And now there's a whole conversation around happening around like, how do we give Best Game Direction to a game where we know that the developers crunched? Like, is that actually good management? Should we actually be awarding a game studio's management team for forcing their employees to do mandatory crunch? Like, Is that what we're saying? Like, this is the pinnacle of what we can do?
And how can we celebrate The Last of Us 2? I mean, there are reasons aesthetically, and I would say final product wise, but CD Projekt Red is coming under a lot of scrutiny right now for the crunch that their developers had to go through to create Cyberpunk 2077, and it launched horribly, and there's recalls and refunds happening as we speak. But it's like, how can we, first of all, how do you make a game about like super exploitative like corporations when you're forcing all your devs to crunch like crazy? But also like, how can we put one game on a pedestal and completely be refunding and scrutinizing this other one when both of them had the same unsavory practices going on.
Yeah. And like, I think it just, for me, the big thing is like, we just need to have more space for nuance in these conversations. And I don't know that like, I guess when it comes to the conversation around crunch, I think it's a really complicated conversation. I don't think anyone should having to be like the worker should not have to be forcibly crunched to make these games. Like that is not appropriate. Like we need unions in game dev, like period. But the fact of the matter is that like we don't even know we only know about the crunch we hear about.
Mm.
And just because we're not hearing that a studio had crunch and I just kind of assume that a lot of these studios have problematic work cultures because of just the culture of games in general. I have to assume there's a lot of shit going on behind the scenes that we don't know about that's probably problematic. And so to some extent it's like I don't want to be like awarding studios that are behaving this way when we know they're behaving this way and just brushing that under the rug. But I also think we have to acknowledge that this is not a studio by studio problem, and it's something more pervasive to the entire industry. It's something more pervasive to like just the culture around gaming in general. And we have to just create more nuance in these conversations. I loved, I know we're kind of, we're talking about TLU 2, The Last of Us 2, and we're also talking about Cyberpunk. But something I loved about the way Polygon did their Cyberpunk review is that they had their review and then kind of posted in a side column right next to it. They had had a whole little blurb about how we know that the developer has been crunching like crazy to make Cyberpunk. And it's like, yeah, we have to be able to still talk about these games, still talk about things that we enjoy about them, and also like bring in this other stuff. Like we have to, nothing is, it's not black and white. It's not binary. These things are nuanced and complicated because especially these big games, but most games are made by a lot of people. And so you can't just kind of look at them through one lens and say like, that's all it is. And that's the whole narrative around this thing. Like there's got to be space for it to be more complicated than that. And we have to embrace those complications and not say like, well, because we like this thing, we're going to put it on a pedestal and brush all this other shit under the rug and not acknowledge it. We've got to hold that complexity.
100%. And honestly, like as someone who works as a product designer building software, like I work on a team of software engineers, product managers, designers like myself, and writers. And there is not a single like project in existence where we say, okay, we're going to build this entire feature and it's going to be 100% tested and ready for the public on May 1st, 2021. There is no project that like, I think we need to change the way that we think about, like you said, how we create and release games. Like it's not the same thing as, I think it's very common for the like consumer entertainment industries to want to be able to state a date so that they can start marketing from that and work backwards and make sure to build the hype and all the things that go into it. But when you're scheduling something like 8 years in advance, you have no idea what kind of challenges will come up in the building of the software. You don't know about what happens in people's lives. You have personnel changes, you have bugs, you have new technologies that emerge, you have new tools that come out, you have differences like changes in positioning, like you learn more information about your target audience and you pivot. Like there's so many little things that happen over the life cycle of software development. And in the industry that I work, like it is so common to say like, oh, actually, like we actually need to move this release back 2 weeks, and that's just the life in software development. Like, and I think it's challenging for games because they're held to these very hard deadlines, and people are demanding a level of quality, but not respecting the fact that to achieve that level of quality, it takes time. It takes the coordination between hundreds of people. And so like, I think we have it easier because I don't know, I think especially in this world of like browser based app software that like productivity tools and what have you, there's not often like product improvements aren't always surrounded by a ton of fanfare. Like you just kind of expect that over time the software changes and has improvements made to it.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we treat games in a similar way? Like why don't we understand that they are living, breathing works of art? Like I think that's changing. Like especially like in the MMO world, it's more common to be like, oh great, there's more content coming, it's updating, there's more missions, whatever. But I think that we just need to be more understanding as a consumer culture too about what it takes to build software.
Yeah, I think the blame is shared a bit on both sides of it. Like I think there's the owners and the stockholders and all the people who are financially invested in these games that are forcing things to happen on a timeline that is unreasonable and not responding to developer concerns and developers saying like this is what it's going to take and this is where things are at. And then on the other side of it, you have like when a game does get delayed or something does come out with, and like let's divorce this from the Cyberpunk conversation because that game came out fucking broken on current gen consoles to a level that's inexcusable, and that blame really does live with the higher ups at that company. But in general, like when we as gamers, the capital G gamer culture, like throws a fucking fit because a game got delayed or because, a game doesn't have as much content as they expect or whatever. Just when we like are sending death threats and being assholes on the internet about this shit, like that doesn't help it either. We've just all got to be better to each other and like understand that everyone is human and these are humans making these games.
Yeah.
And they can't be treated the way I think that they're being treated. And that's not to say like, I don't know. The other thing that comes up in crunch culture conversations is like, well, I'm not a game developer. I work a normal job and I have to crunch sometimes. It's like, okay, no one should have to. Like this argument isn't that like game developers should be getting special treatment. And also there's like a reality of the way things work. I don't know. It's so fucking complicated. It's so fucking complicated. And that's why, my argument is just that like, we've got to be more open about these conversations and we've got to let the nuance be able to exist. And sometimes contradictory things are going to be true because that's real life.
Right. And this isn't a problem specific to the gaming industry. Like we just had a conversation on Friday where our team was really pushing to have, this new feature out at X date. And our developer was like, to do that, I'm going to have to crunch over the holidays. And we were like, no, people are more important than software. Like, fuck that. We'll push the release date back 2 weeks. Like, that's just life in software development land. So, like, people need to be more aware of, like, what this type of work looks like. And like you said, executive shareholders, like managers need to be, like, I think the developers you need the developers to make the game. So I feel like you should treat them nice.
Yeah. Yep. We're pro developers here. All right, Spencer, what's your last award?
Yeah. So, as we just mentioned, it's a game that, we definitely have a lot to sit with and process around. But like The Last of Us 2, my last award is for Character of the Year. That's actually I'm changing it to Characters of the Year. And I want to call out Abby and Lev, who are in The Last of Us Part 2, because I don't think that it would be right to acknowledge, like I've seen that Abby has been, looked at as like a great character this year and her story is so powerful, OMG. But honestly, like, as we were sort of talking about the problematic nature of the fact that in the Last of Us series, like people of color are pretty much like props to like color in the stories of white people. And I think in a lot of ways, Abby's growth. So in the game, it's a story of a woman named Ellie who is growing up in this traumatic zombie-filled world and happens to be immune from zombie bites. You should look up the first game and look into the story if you don't know anything about this game. But essentially, Ellie goes through an incredibly traumatic experience at the beginning of The Last of Us Part 2. And the rest of the story is sort of one of revenge and anger and rage as she seeks to fill the gaping hole left in her life by this tremendous loss by killing everybody in sight. And it, it's not, that's not, the point of the story is not killing people. Like, that's what you do in the game, but it's a game that's really examining like cycles of violence and trauma and what it means to be a person who's forced to choose between impossible decisions. And it's about forgiveness, and it's about growth, and it's about a lot of things. The story also features this character named Abby, who for, I would say, much of the first half of the game, you really do not like Abby. And
she's positioned as the villain, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. And Abby, like, I don't want to spoil the game because I think it's a really great game to experience, but I think similarly to the emotional journey I had with Kratos, I found a lot to love about Abby the more that I played the game. And maybe it's selfish of her, but in meeting the character Lev in the story is a real turning point for her. Lev is also one of the characters this year that us in the trans community have received. I actually love Lev. He's a trans masculine character played by Ian Alexander. Just a great fighter, an emotionally rich story. I have my problems with Last of Us Part 2 because, again, as I mentioned earlier, his story is one that's filled with trauma and familial pain. But I think that the relationship between Lev and Abby, and the way that I don't know, it was a spot of light in a really dark story. And I think too, it was just maybe it's as simple as it's the first time that as an Asian transmasculine person, Ian Alexander, who plays Lev, is also half Asian, half white like myself, and a trans masculine person like myself. And I've never played a game and seen myself in it like that. And it was just really cool. And so they're my characters of the year because they really made me feel something. And I also saw myself in a video game, which I've been playing games for 20 plus years, and that's never happened. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that does. It does suck. But yeah, Abby and Lev are the heart of The Last of Us Part 2, right? And their story and their journey is really special and says a lot about the families that we choose versus the ones that we're born into. So yeah, I think they're really strong characters. I don't know, Laura, we were just talking about the Game Awards. Laura Bailey, who plays Abby, won the award for best performance in games this year, and I think it was well deserved. She was a really cool character to see on screen, and her and Lev's dynamic was great. So I definitely agree. If they are not exactly my character of the year, they are certainly in the pool. Yeah.
Who's your character of the year?
I don't have.
Oh, okay. When you said they're not in mine, I was like, oh.
Oh no, I just meant like they're definitely. I haven't put enough thought into like who would be my one, but they'd definitely be up there. They'd definitely be on the short list. Yeah. But the final award that I was going to give today,
last but not least,
and like I had to put this award on here because I felt like if we hadn't talked about this game, it would have been sacrilege for us in this podcast. But I'm gonna give a dual award of best photo mode and also the game that we can't shut up about to Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
There it is. Take your drink if you're playing the Pixel Therapy podcast drinking game to drink every time we mention Ghost of Tsushima. That game is
Pixel Therapy, unofficially sponsored by Ghost of Tsushima.
That game is so pretty, though. Like, I spent so much time in the photo mode taking pictures of the environment. All of the pictures are like low angle of my horse running through a beautiful field. But what a pretty game. What a cool open world game. What an interesting setting. What great characters. That game, it's like, it just kind of hit on every level. And I enjoyed it a lot, and we certainly have talked about it a lot on this podcast.
We love you, Earl. We love you, Daisuke.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, like, just what a good ass game that was.
Just a good ass game. It's like, yeah. I don't think it. I think it, at least in terms of like an open world game, it just kind of like it learned from like all of the other games we've had this generation and just kind of like did everything right. That's how I feel about Ghost of Tsushima. Is like it wasn't like changing the world. It just did everything right and hit exactly what it needed to hit.
Yeah.
Well, I think time is up for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. I want to kind of throw it out there to folks. You know, what are your unofficial game awards of 2020? We'd love for you to reach out to us and let us know. You can email us at pixeltherapypod@gmail.com, and we'll read them on the air next time. If you email us before January 1st, we'll put it into our next recording. But yeah, email us. Let us know. What are your unofficial game awards of 2020? A quick special thank you / apology to our guest co-sponsor and clutch companion, Yinka Araromi, who has been subscribing at our top tier since we launched the Patreon, who's helping us cultivate upcoming guests. Yinka, we are so appreciative of your sponsorship, and we appreciate you bearing with us as we navigate the Patreon space. Typically, your sponsorship at this level will be included in our social media post for the episode and our show notes. But that did not happen earlier this month when we released Cece's episode. So we wanted to give you a special extra thank you for your patience and generosity.
We love you, Yinka.
We really do.
What the hell?
Thank you so much. If you, listener, want to be like Yinka, you can come check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can get a monthly bonus episode for just $2 a month, plus opportunities to get involved with the community and influence the show directly. If you're not up for contributing monetarily, but you enjoyed this episode, there are lots of ways you can support us for free, including following us on Instagram and other social media at pixeltherapypod, or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. That stuff is just as important, and we do appreciate it just as much. If you want to reach out to us, like I said before, you can send us that email at pixeltherapypod@gmail.com, and you can keep up with all things Pixel Therapy by checking out our brand spanking new website. Thank you, Spencer. It looks amazing, and you can find that at pixeltherapypod.com. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into that baby.
Yeah, a lot of blood, sweat, and pixels. Exactly. Same address, pixeltherapypod.com, but we've just made it a lot more user friendly, and WordPress is really hard to use, so I feel like I wrangled the heck out of that. So just proud of our baby. We love her. Finally, as we end every episode, we'd like to share with you this week's recommended side quest. They're just ideas for how you might be able to get involved on a community or national or even international scale. Shout out to our international outside the US listeners. We heart you. Anyway, so this week, since it's close to the end of year holidays here in the US, I wanted to talk about an organization that's really important to me personally. And that organization is GLAD, and that's Glbtq Legal Advocates and Defenders. You can find them at glad.org. That's GLAD.org. But essentially, GLAD is I just said the title. But they're lawyers who fight on behalf of LGBTQ people all across the United States. GLAD is actually responsible for the landmark case in 2008 that legalized gay marriage in the U.S. They advocate for trans rights, to create a just society that's free of discrimination based on gender identity and expression, an orientation, and also HIV status. HIV is still an illness that's like super stigmatized here in the US. For a long time in the 80s, queer folks were really demonized. For being seen as like spreading HIV. And there's just like a lot of really bad misinformation out there. And GLAAD is working to change that. I serve on the board of directors for GLAAD, and in my life, there have been times where, because I am trans, my housing has been threatened. I've been threatened physical harm. There have been times where work has been an unsafe place for me. And GLAAD's legal advice hotline was there for me to answer questions and empower me at a time when like I didn't know who to talk to, because I didn't have like any adults in my life who could like help me with that kind of stuff. So GLAAD's a really great organization. They're about civil rights. I think, fighting for LGBTQ rights and the rights of people of color who are also queer and trans creates a better world for all of us. And so, if you're thinking about places you might want to give to, GLAAD's, like every other organization, has been hit pretty hard by COVID. It's cut out the ability for in-person gatherings, for like their clinics and resources that they used to do in person. It all has to go online. And it's a small team based here in Boston doing this work. So just really thankful for the organization and for my opportunity to volunteer with them. So again, you can check them out at glaad.org. And yeah, there's a big donate button right at the top of the page. And there's also a ton more information about recent cases, litigation they're working on right now, and just the history of the organization.
That's awesome. Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That is our show for today. So go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats, and don't forget to hug an NPC every now and then. We'll be back soon with some more
Pixel therapy.
Happy New Year.